Welcome to Beyond the Press Release, a production of Agoracom, in which we take the time to speak with small cap executives after they put out important news. With us today, happy to have him back because he keeps putting out important news. We got two press releases we're talking about today. Steve Saviuk, CEO of Valeo Pharma, trades on the CSE under VPH. For our friends in the US, VPHIF, and for our friends in Europe on Frankfurt under VP2. For those of you new to the story, because you may have seen the headlines that they've been putting out, so it's attracting a lot more attention. Valeo is essentially a revenue-generating Canadian pharmaceutical company. But the way they do it is what I love about in the small cap space. They acquire the Canadian rights to commercial stage proprietary drugs, and then they commercialize them in Canada. So they don't have to go through all that expense of going drug trials and R&D and spending tens of millions of dollars and all the risk. They go take great products from around the world that don't necessarily have Canada as a target market, and they say, hey, we'll represent you here. Let us do the work for you, and essentially become the marketing arm. And that's translated to success. 2020 revenues, $7.5 million. So they're doing great. Q1 revenue, $1.9 million. And they're telling us that Q2 is going to be a record for the company. So here to talk about that and another press release is Steve. Welcome back.
George, it's always nice to be back on your show, and we enjoy coming here. And we follow you on a regular basis.
That's great to know. That's great. I really appreciate that. And it's easy to talk about you guys. It's always energetic because, look, two press releases we're going to talk about. The one is the projecting record Q2. But first, what we want to talk about is an update on private payer reimbursement for your asthma therapies. Normally, that would be like, well, that sounds kind of boring, or that doesn't sound like a big deal. But let's talk about these drugs first, and then talk about why this private payer reimbursement is so big for you.
Yeah, exactly. We're very pleased with that. These two new asthma therapies are products that we licensed from Novartis Canada. They're new drugs. They have not been on the market yet. They're both approved by Health Canada. We actually have them in our warehouse, and we should start shipping them in the next 10 to 14 days. So our commercial launch is imminent. They did not impact Q2 revenues, these two products, as we haven't started shipping yet. But what's important about these two products is that based on extensive clinical trials that Novartis performed, the drugs demonstrated that they provide a significant improvement in the current standard of care for asthma, people who suffer from asthma. What's interesting also is that the drugs were compared against one of the best asthma therapies out there called Advair, which is a GlaxoSmithKline product that does over $200 million of revenue. And in published journals, so this is in public domain, we can send you these articles of the trials, over 7,500 patients worldwide.
Wow, that's massive.
Canada, a significant beneficial improvement over Advair, and that means a reduction in asthma attacks, increase in lung function, and a reduction in other symptoms typically associated with asthma. So these drugs are going to set a new bar in asthma therapy in Canada, we believe, and they're about to be launched. So we're very excited about how those will add to our revenue growth.
And more than just lip service, more than just saying, well, these are our products now and they're great. Those comparisons with the leading product were key in you achieving this level of private coverage. So let's talk about that, because you announced that both asthma drugs have already secured 80% of all private payer reimbursement in Canada. Why is that so important?
Well, let's say, let's look at how when patients buy or prescribe medication, they go to their pharmacy and they receive medication. The vast majority of patients receive the drugs are paid for either by the provinces themselves, so Ontario in your case, George, or by private payers, so life insurance companies that offer drug benefits plans to employers of these patients. So the vast majority. In asthma, about 50% of asthma patients have their drugs are paid for by this private coverage, and 50% are paid for by public coverage, about an equal split. And it varies by different different diseases in terms of what that split may be. Our Parkinson's drug, as an example, it would probably be about 70-75% paid publicly, 25% paid privately, because patients are older, typically have retired. So going back to our asthma drug, getting 80% of private lives covered means that 80% of the people that are insured by private health insurance plans can actually get these asthma therapies paid for by these plans, and that's really important. Most
And is
people.
that big coverage, Steve? 80%? Like, for example, somebody at home might be wondering, well, why isn't it 100%? Which I would assume probably isn't the case. So how is 80% really good coverage?
80% is excellent coverage, and we will get to, if not 100, to very close to 100. And when I say not close, I mean in the high 90s. But we felt that to release this 80% gave certainly patients and physicians a sense of, okay, we have coverage. So if I prescribe this product, my patient will not have to pay out of pocket. There will be an insurance company that will pay. And also it's an important factor for the market and for our shareholders and potential shareholders to know that these asthma therapies are well on their way to being reimbursed, what we call reimbursed. And that's a key for all drugs. I mean, all drugs rely to an extent on this type of coverage.
And were you waiting for, I would assume logic dictates you're probably waiting for this kind of milestone before you really went full bore on your distribution and marketing, correct? Because you wanted to make sure you had paying customers out there.
That's right. You want patients to be able to have access to these drugs and to have someone who is going to be paying for these drugs, and it's critical. So our commercial activities will start in a couple of phases. The phase of actually making the product available at pharmacy will happen within the next 2 weeks, and by June 21st, our sales force will start initiating contacts with physicians. We already are talking to some of the key opinion leaders in Canada. We're finding a very strong response, strong acceptance of our drug and the clinical data that these two drugs have. But the 10 or 11,000 physicians that we'll initially target will start targeting June 21st. So we see these two asthma drugs as providing some revenue, an important element of revenue in Q3, but they will build every quarter thereafter. This is a 5-year build of revenue where these drugs will sell in significant jumps up every quarter going forward. And that's why we think over the next 5 years, our revenue growth is going to be significant. And Paradigm Capital just put out a research report on us where they rated us the #1 compounded annual growth revenue company in Canada in the pharma space. So that's pretty exciting for their analysts to believe that our revenue growth will outpace just about everyone else that we can be compared to.
And for everyone that's new to the story, first of all, that's great. I'm glad you brought that up at the end, because that's a great third-party validation. Because I was going to bring up a point that your blood thinner product that trails all this by about 6 months or so, you guys are projecting when it's at its peak, it's going to be doing $30 million a year in revenue for you. So these are no small. You guys have clearly proven that you can pick the right drugs that are as good, if not better, and or cheaper than the incumbent. So do you have a general expectation for what these asthma therapies might be able to do? I'm not asking for a projection, but what kind of an impact do you think they'll have to the top line for the company?
We have to look over a period of 4 to 5 years. I mean, we expect both of these two drugs together combined to generate well over $100 million of revenue.
Wow.
So now, and that pace should be fairly consistent, where every year it's jumping by a certain percentage amount. Typically, you'll see the first year, because of a number of factors, getting your team together and that can be relatively single-digit millions, but clearly the second year and below, it's double-digit millions and strong growth after that. So we talked about the asthma therapies will be well over 50% of our revenues 5 years from now, based on the products we currently have. I can't, what we might license in the coming months or coming years could change that number, but it won't change the absolute dollars they'll provide. But I just want to circle back to your Redesca comment. We launched Redesca about a month ago. It's exceeding our sales expectations during that period, intervening period of time. It's clearly well on its way. It'll have a big impact on Q3. It had a smaller impact on Q2 because we launched it literally in the
middle of the quarter.
Two, but Q3 we've had a great start to the month, to the quarter, great month of May, and we firmly believe internally that we're going to see quarter over quarter consistent, significant revenue increases, and ultimately by mid-year next year, profitability and significant profitability thereafter. Project 30% EBITDA, and we just redid those projections more recently in the last few days, actually, just retesting all our financial hypotheses. And again, we're seeing that 30% EBITDA. So if we get to 100, 150 million, the significant EBITDA. The other thing I would like to say is
unbelievable.
As a company with growth in its potential, you're looking at multiples of sales, which typically these companies trade at in Paradigm is you're looking somewhere between 8 and 12. But as a mature company or a more mature company, which we will be in, let's say 3, 4, 5 years, you're looking roughly around 4 times sales. So if our sales go to 160 million or 150 million, whatever they may be, what would that be market cap wise? Pretty significant number.
Especially consider today, you're about 75 million, give or take.
We think there's tremendous upside in our shares, and we've got the products. We've got products that are big products in the sense that they address a big market and therefore have that big potential. And then it comes down to execution, and execution is all about people. And we brought in a new president in January who's got the experience in Canada, who's built businesses, who ran a big team, who's launched products. We're adding to that team as we speak. So we think the execution side is well taken care of, and it's I think a very exciting time at Valeo to watch it, and it's great to be part of it.
And every success brings more success, right? Because Redesca, your blood thinner, is already in the market, and you're exceeding expectations. And your asthma therapies are going to be coming to market pretty soon. And as these drugs, as these licensed drugs or licensed therapies continue to hit or exceed expectations, I've got to figure, Steve, your reputation around the world is only going to grow. So you can have Georgecom Pharmaceutical in Europe somewhere. Your reputation is growing, saying, "Well, look, we don't have the economies of scale to go hit the Canadian market. We hit the EU and the US, but we're hearing these great things about this company called Valeo in Canada, and they can provide a nice bonus that we never even projected in our financials." Is that what's happening? That the world is starting to hear about the success you guys are having?
Absolutely, and part of that is focus. We're focused on 3 areas of the 3 various therapeutic areas, as they're known: respiratory with asthma drugs, oncology or cancers, and various types of cancers, but more solid tumor cancers, and neurology, where we have interesting Parkinson's therapy. And this is what draws companies to you. It's the reputation of the company. It's having some scale, and it's being in a therapeutic area where the licensors are looking to launch products. We can't be everything to everyone. In Canada, if you're looking for, let's say, a cardiology product, there's better companies than us to go see. We're not in cardiology, but what we want to be is the go-to in respiratory, the go-to in neurology, go-to in oncology. Where a foreign company looking at Canada, Valeo is, we've got a product. We think who's first on the list. It's not the company that starts with A, it's the company that starts with V. It's Valeo because they have that, sales force, they have the market knowledge, they have their relationships with the key physicians. This is what people look for, and the ability to execute. And that's what we're going to be showing. We're showing now, and we will continue to show in the coming quarters. And all of that comes around to something where you say it's the people are confident in you, they have faith in you, and they feel you're the best partner for their drugs in Canada. So it puts us in a strong position, I think, and we're already seeing it because we're currently negotiating with companies. Not to say that this will, there's negotiating and completing a deal is there's a
Two
big
different things, yeah.
between.
But you've already proven that you can pull it off. You're not George Pharma that
Uh,
says and tries. You've already pulling it off. So if you're negotiating 6 or 7, I'm sure you're going to get 3 of those or something. It's not a case of
and we have to make them fit, and they have to be they have to meet our criteria, which are, I think, pretty stringent. They've always been where the drugs bring a benefit to patients or benefit to the Canadian healthcare system in either, as you said earlier, in savings. And actually, I guess I've been on this show long enough, or as often enough, that you actually encapsulate what Valeo is all about in your 2-minute intro wonderfully. I think better than I could have encapsulated it. So direct and right to the point. But yeah, absolutely. Building that market credibility is key for us.
Last question. So the headline is Valeo projecting record revenues for second quarter, which ended April 30th. But given everything you've been talking about, Redesca, your blood thinner, just kind of got going in the middle of the second quarter. So it's going to have its full legs in the third quarter. And then your asthmas are going to kind of start somewhere around the middle of the end of the second quarter, just ramping up. Safe to say, Steve, I have to assume that this is just going to be the beginning of record quarterly revenues. This is probably going to be a run for at least the next 3-4 quarters because you're ramping up some pretty big products. So safe to assume you should be doing records Q2, Q3, Q4.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it's interesting. We just with these products, and specifically those 3 you've just mentioned, and we can't forget our core products, which are actually growing, and products like Yondelis, which we're now going to have for a full year, so they're contributing rather than just a few months as they did last year. Amatop also. Yeah, we see this quarterly growth going out as far. We project typically 5 years, and we see it going out 5 years. Just consistent growing quarters. Again, with our existing portfolio, not taking into consideration, any other products, and the types of products we're looking for or looking at right now. Some are approved in Canada; they just haven't been launched yet. Others are never seen Canadian soil. We have to bring them in, and yet others are actually selling in Canada. So there's various stages of products that we're looking at, and it's got to fit within what we believe we can do to add value to those products, and the right commercial arrangements with our partners, but also the right commercial arrangements for most importantly is patients in Canada. The drugs have to be priced in a reasonable fashion for the Canadian healthcare system. And our 2 asthma therapies are that. I think Novartis did a wonderful job by pricing them at what existing therapies are and not pricing them at a premium given their increased benefits. So I think this is it's a very compelling argument to have a better therapy at the same price as you're currently paying.
And one great thing about these interviews is you pick up information you can't pick up just by reading a press release. We can hear the drilling. We can hear the hammering. You guys are putting your money where your mouth is because you're expanding your headquarters, right? Like you're massively expanding warehouse space, office space. Smart people don't go spend that kind of money unless they know they need that more warehouse space. They know they need more office space. Great anecdotal information, Steve.
Yes, absolutely. We're doubling our warehouse facility, to carry the inventory that we need for the increased sales. We're adding bodies. I know people say, well, that's cost, but that's short-term cost. But you need those bodies to generate the long-term revenues. You can't build $100 million brand without a significant sales infrastructure, and that infrastructure is being in place and it's hitting the tires hit the road, so to speak, in June 21. It's literally weeks away. So very exciting time, very bustling time, and in the middle of all that, we have to endure the hammers and the saws because we're working from home, from the office, I should say. We're there. So
I think those are great sounds to hear. Hammers, saws, and drills means action, means growth, right? It's better than crickets.
I'm very, and I just want to, I'll end off with just one comment is,
sure.
And I know people, when we first announced the Novartis deal, and there was a comment about, well, you're going to be expanding your team management and sales considerably. How do you do it? Well, when we did the Novartis deal, we licensed, we were at 40 people. We're at 57 today. And we'll be 70, 80 by the end of June, and well over.
Wow, that's massive growth, Steve. That's fast growth.
That is, and we will have we'll have coverage on a par with the multinationals, and our competitors in respiratory are bigger companies, and we'll have a sales team out there that really compares to theirs. So you've got to have that doctor interaction. You have to be able to get out there and talk about the benefits of a particular drug, and you have to be able to say, hey, this drug is covered, so your patients can get this drug reimbursed by their private plan, and public will come. Where that's the process that's starting. Is typically a bit longer than the private, and we'll start seeing that. I think the turn of the year is where we'll start getting provinces to jump on board. Redesca, on the other hand, we are already covered in Ontario publicly, and we expect to announce a number of other provinces with public coverage for Redesca in the coming weeks.
And what's great about Valeo, what I love about Valeo is that you have competitors, you have bigger pharmaceutical company competitors, but small cap investors can't participate in their growth anymore. Those stories are mature. They've already had their big growth, whereas Valeo today is still at a really, like I said, $75 million market cap. And by the way, we're not giving any financial advice, any solicitations like that. But when you do your due diligence, for everybody at home, you can see the success already happen. You can see the record quarters already happening, Novartis and partners like that. So you've got to do your due diligence, because this is one of the very few situations where small cap investors can grow with a pharmaceutical company that's at the small cap stage and really entering its growth phase for the next 3-4 years. And that's what's so exciting, Steve. So congratulations to your team. Thanks for being here. And I guess June 21st, or give or take a day, we'll be back on again with the official launch.
Yeah, we'll put up some news on that when the commercial team actually starts hitting the road. And as you know, in these days, hitting the road doesn't mean hitting the road. It means interacting with physicians, and much of that is done digitally now. And we think that'll remain. There'll probably be some transformation back to seeing doctors face to face, but I think that digital aspect is here to stay, and we're making a lot of inroads with new technologies that improve that interaction with.
And even that's a big advantage for you, right? Because even though you're building up the sales infrastructure, you may not have the sales infrastructure for the really big pharmaceutical who have that on the road. So digital allows you to kind of meet them a lot faster than you would as you are building your sales team. So that's actually working in your favor as well.
Really pushed a lot of technologies for outreaching digitally and in the pharma space also. So I think is going to make us more efficient. We'll be able to cover potentially more physicians with the same number of representatives. So there's a lot of benefits out of this.
Steve, thanks for joining us today, my friend. Congratulations to you, your team, because you got a big team there, and can't wait. Like literally, you and I are going to be on pretty much every month for the rest of the year, because growth just keeps on coming. It's exciting to watch. And on behalf of all shareholders, I think I can be the proxy that says, thank you for the work you guys have done, because you make it look easy. And if you know anything about business, it's anything but easy.
George, thanks for your kind words, and we look forward to many returns on your podcast.
For everybody at home, you've been watching or you've been listening by podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple, your favorite podcast platform, to Steve Saviuk, he's CEO of Valeo Pharma, trades on the CSE under VPH. For our friends in the US, VPHIF, and for our friends in Europe, always on Frankfurt under VP2. For those who knew the story because you saw these headlines, especially the record Q2, and you're wondering, hey, small caps have been going through some difficult times. Who's this company that's projecting record Q2 revenues? You got to start your due diligence. 2 ways to do that. First, get to the Valeo profile on the Gorcom, because we know this is pharma. So that's where we give you the layman's overview of the company, its products, and what it's doing, because pharma can be complicated. Great overview. And then once you got that foundation of knowledge, head over to the Valeo website. You got the link there right inside the profile in the hub on Agoracom to do your deep dive due diligence. The company setting records. You got to do your due diligence and find out if you want to grow with the company over the next 6, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years. Hopefully you do. Don't say we didn't tell you so. See you next time.